Hi there, it's Jorden Guth. After blowing past the due date, our baby boy has finally arrived. Baby Enzo and mom are doing great, and thank you to everyone who's been reaching out with kind words and well wishes. Scheduling in interviews has been more of a challenge, though it should be getting easier as things start to settle down here. For now, I'd like to share this archival episode with Bernie Grundman, where he discusses the ins and outs of mastering and gives his take on digital versus analog versus radio versus streaming. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Soundstage Audiophile Podcast. In this second season of the show, host Jorden Guth is joined by a new guest each episode who knows something about hi-fi that Jorden doesn't. And who knows, while he's learning about all of this, you might learn something too. So with no further ado, here's Jorden and this week's guest.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Soundstage Audiophile Podcast. Today we are extremely fortunate to have the legendary mastering engineer Bernie Grundman with us. Bernie, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm always ready to talk about audio and about the ways that we can manipulate it and so forth. And just whatever you want me to go into and describe, I'll try my best.
Oh, I love it. So a few weeks back, I was speaking to a gentleman by the name of Joseph Taylor, who's one of the editors on the Soundstage network of audiophile websites. And your name kept on coming up a whole bunch as Joseph was explaining the records that he liked and all kinds of different stuff. So at the time, I didn't really know, I didn't have a full sense of what a mastering engineer actually does. So to kick things off, I guess the first question I'd love to ask you is, what does a mastering engineer do? What are the goals and the results of your work on an album or a song?
Well, mastering is, of course, the final stage. It's the last chance that you have to do any final adjustments and manipulations of the sound or whatever to try to get the best connection of the emotional effect of the music, which that is what music is anyway. It's an emotional, say, story or a journey that's, we're all the same feelings, the same emotions. So we're trying to connect with people, these emotions that music has. You know, music is that portrayal, the emotional experience of being a human being. And we're all the same. We all have the same emotions. And that's why you can't, I've gone through this whole stage of being when I was a teenager, I was a pretty big snob, because when you're a teenager, you really know everything, don't you?
Of course.
So anyway, I was a bebop jazz person, and I was into audio when I was there when it was really just starting high fidelity, before stereo even. I was there in the mid 50s, and I was very taken with jazz, so that's all I was mainly interested in. However, now that I've been in the business, and I had to learn this as I got deeper in as a mastering engineer, was I had to I began to realize that it's really all the same thing. Music is an expression, an emotional expression of a certain type of music, but it's still trying to access the listener with a certain message that's emotional. So music is that. It's basically that. That's why it's so immediate. So our goal as mastering engineers is to heighten that experience, try to do whatever we think is going to help it make a better connection with the listener, so the listener can get the message, the emotional message that the artist is trying to portray. And it could be any kind of music. It can be polka music. It can be Hawaiian music. Who knows? It can be anything. Some of it's very narrow, just like people that do dance music for parties and stuff. And I always point this out. I always say, the thing is, their goal is to make people want to get up and dance and carry on and party. Okay, that would be a certain expertise. You don't want to pander to it. If you believe in it, you're probably going to make something that makes people want to jump up and party. Because I always use the example of you don't have a party and put on classical music.
Not a fun party.
It's a whole different thing then, because let's face it, I mean, it's much more involved. It takes you on a classical. on a long emotional journey, but and it takes you through all kinds of experiences. But with the other stuff, like even elevator music, when I'm on an elevator, I want something that's relaxing, that hopefully the elevator isn't going to fall or something, all this kind of stuff. It's like it has a place. It all has a place. So I had to learn that. I had to realize that, hey, it all means something. It's all one person's portrayal of certain emotions or certain kind of atmospheres for the listener. And if I can make it connect better with the listener as a product when it finally comes out, I'm the go-between. I'm the last person that can maybe help it even be more effective. And sometimes I can do that. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes it's done so extremely well by the mixer that there's very little that I need to do. But the main thing that I'm pointing out here is that as a mastering engineer, because I don't know what's coming in the door, it can be any kind of music, but it's all done by some human being somewhere. So if I'm not prejudiced, I should be able to connect with it regardless of what kind of music it is. And that way I know if I'm doing anything beneficial to it when I start manipulating the sound. So I need to be in touch with it myself emotionally. So I can't be prejudiced. Yeah. Like I said, when I was a teenager, hey, bebop was it. Forget about pop music and all this stuff. Well, even though I realized that it had certain values and all of that, I just didn't spend a lot of time with it. So now, of course, after all these years, I've spent a lot of time with everything you can think of. That's why I have a nice advantage in that I've experienced so many different kinds of music and so much that I really have kind of a sensitivity to it. And that's mainly what I think needs to be developed. When I give seminars, I tell these young guys that are starting out, I said, look, you've got to spend time with all these different kinds of music, and you've got to be able to develop a sense of what a really good one of that kind of music sounds like. What a really effective one that really makes you want to sit up and listen. And then when somebody else comes in with a similar kind of music, you kind of need to know where it can be, how far it can go, how strong that connection can be made. And then you try to manipulate it to be as effective as some of those most effective ones of that kind of music. Now, sometimes the performances aren't as good, various things like that, but at least you have a goal. You have a place to go. You know how good it can be. So just like jazz too, like some of the best players, you'd like to at least develop the sound stage, develop this atmosphere and so forth, which is all part of getting people to get involved in the music, any kind of music. So you've got the mixer that's trying to do the same thing that I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to enhance it even more. And then when it comes to albums and various things like that, I try to make it consistent. I try to make it so that when you sit down and listen to an album, that it flows from tune to tune. These are the things that we do as mastering engineers. We do all the finishing touches on all of these albums.
Now, that's fascinating. Does that mean that when it comes to, let's say, an album, are you potentially like rearranging the orders of the songs to kind of have them more flow, or is that already set by that point?
No, the producer and artist a lot
typically
of times
set that bit.
They don't know yet. They're not sure what the sequence is, but a lot of times they've already spent a lot of time figuring out what's going to fit following each tune. And but sometimes they'll change it, and sometimes they'll send it in without any sequence. They haven't even decided. So I'll put it in a tentative sequence, but I really don't decide that usually. I mean, I have a few like general pointers and stuff like that, but just to get people interested in your album, you should start out with one of the best tunes. So
Fair enough.
So people feel that this is let's keep going here, and then the second tune should be even better. Now they're really relaxed. Now it's like, now you can do what you want with them. You can go to a ballad or something that's a little harder to get involved in. So all of this is a typical pop idea.
Yeah.
But that's the way they work. And it tends to work anyway, because the thing about anybody that's interested in music is that you want to get their attention. With all this resurgence of vinyl, a lot of the kids were always having playlists, and they had stuff playing in the background, and they were working on their computer and on their cell phone and doing all this kind of stuff, and they weren't really that involved. Now with vinyl, you have to stop. Yeah. You have to put the record on. You have to put the needle on.
It's a ritual.
Yeah, you have to put that. But here, everything's been quiet now up to now. So when you set the level, you're there, you're paying attention. Yeah. Now you set the level where you want to listen to it, and you might even pay attention and get more out of the music than you ever have before. So it has created that kind of effect. And I hear people talking about it all the time. Hey, kids are getting together and they're listening to records together. I said, wow, what a concept.
I've seen that come and go and come back again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the way we used to live.
So between and that, this kind of brings up all kinds of different questions. One, I can imagine that in the age of, like, you essentially now have the choice of mastering for digital productions and then for analog productions, I'm guessing, right? Does that change the things that you do to the song when you know it's going to be played back in an analog environment, in a record?
Well, I know what I would like to do. Now, it depends on what the record company and what the producer and what they're willing to pay for also.
Got it.
Because, a lot of stuff that's destined for digital, like streaming and various things like that, is handled in a little different way. It's more commercialized in a funny way. In other words, it has to kind of like fit in a playlist. You don't want to be too low in level and things like that. You want to have a pretty high average level so that it kind of flows from one other person's tune to another person's and then yours. And then, so it's like everything's like different artists and stuff in a row. So it's kind of hard to know even what's going to happen. But most people are concerned about it being noticed. So when they put on something next to other artists' recordings, they don't want it to sound inferior, or what they think is inferior, which would be a lower level. Now, it would probably be better quality, lower level, but are you going to be able to get people to turn their volume up for that one and then turn it back down for somebody else? And so there's always been this thing about, in the pop market, in the commercial end of it, is loud. Everybody wants these loud recordings, which of course is going to make the sound inferior, the quality of the sound. There's no way you can get away from it because you have to use all kinds of electronic devices to make things have a high average level. So you're compressing it, you're manipulating it especially in the digital age, because digital, one of the problems of digital is that anything you put into that circuit that's digital, that's going to take that, if it's a digital signal, which a lot of it is nowadays, if you start using something to make it louder or whatever works on level, like EQ, compression, you're going to degrade the sound on everything.
Interesting.
Everything on that recording is now going to have something that doesn't belong there. But it's going to be, it's a coloration of the sound. So think of it this way. It's like a photograph, like you got reds and greens and blues.
Yep.
But after you put it through all of this stuff, it's got a little yellow tint on everything.
Yeah.
They're still there, but they're not as detailed and separated and so forth. It's kind of a little smearier now. Well, if you really listen to some of these digital things, everything has this disease on it. And so it's not pure and natural the way a lot of these, I'm not even saying that it's a problem of digital. It's only a problem of digital when you manipulate digital.
When you go too far.
No, when you go in anything you do. Yeah. Anything you do to digital after it's recorded, it can be really good as a multi-channel device or something like that with different channels, and you've done all your recording. Now you're going to mix it. Now, that's where the problem is. Now, if each one of those tracks on there, you can't change it without losing quality. If you want the vocal up a dB, boom, you're already going to hear a difference in quality. It's not going to sound as good. because it's not the same ones and zeros anymore.
Yeah.
So that's one of that's why the best recordings still are the ones that they record because they pretty much have to nowadays use a multi-channel digital machine, but they mix it on an analog board because you can.
They go back.
They go back through an analog board because you can manipulate the sound there without it changing.
I had no idea.
Oh yeah, the best recordings are that way.
Huh.
So, but it still goes back into digital after that.
Of course, yeah.
You go back into your main computer, your final computer, and now it's been manipulated though. But it's usually primarily selective. Then, if you are going to have to degrade it somewhat, you can do it to just one channel. You might have to do that. So, I mean, there's some compromises here and there to get what you want, because these things are on so many channels a lot of times that it's going to take a lot of manipulation and moving around. They have 10 vocal tracks. Now they want to like pick out and splice together in the computer all these different parts of the vocal to get what they think is the most effective vocal. I mean, there's all of this stuff that goes on now. Whereas a lot of these recordings that a lot of people like were just done direct to 2-track or direct to mono. And everything was done live. And then because there was very little electronics in there, and that's why they still think some of these old recordings are more natural. And they are, because it hasn't been manipulated a lot. Because even analog, if you do a lot of generations and a lot of things like that, it's not going to sound as good. None of them stand up to more and more electronics, especially things that are acoustic, jazz, classical, anything like that, which has a lot of overtones and real subtle resonances and things like that. That's what starts to get lost if you transfer to digital.
So when you talk about doing the final master and doing it on digital, because it always has to go back to digital, does the setting in which people are going to listen to it change how you master it? So what I mean by that is like, do you consider the fact that like some people, when they listen to pop music, it's probably going to be in the car. So would that be mastered differently than something like classical music, where you can assume somebody has like a nicer set of speakers and stuff like that? Or is it like, no, there's going to be one kind of digital master and then there's going to be one analog master?
Well, we do that a lot. We have one that's made like to go in the streaming services, and because these services, they're going to want it to be fairly high average level, so that it's like everybody else is doing that, so that they get noticed. So it's kind of something that you kind of assume in some ways when it's a real straight ahead pop record recording. You know that, and sometimes we'll do 2 masters though. We'll do one with all this processing to make it really loud or a high average level and so forth. And then we'll do another one at higher resolution and for making discs.
Oh, okay. So
a lot of times, a lot of these, even pop artists, the disc many times sounds better than the streaming stuff because they rerun it. It's just like sometimes they'll even mix it to an analog tape machine and then mix it to a digital.
So interesting.
Then they'll give us the analog recording. If it's done on good equipment, then the vinyl comes out from an analog recording that wasn't even manipulated a lot in the digital domain.
Interesting.
So these things do happen when they think that the audience, there is an audience out there that likes vinyl.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can get away with more with vinyl. You don't have to be so competitive in the level way, having things just loud. You can actually go for a little more quality. Like we did the whole, one of my engineers did the whole U2 catalog, and they used to really push it a lot and so forth. But it was all done from the original 1/2-inch 30 masters. And people were saying, God, we're hearing things here we never heard before. Because when we do vinyl, we don't feel we have to do all of that manipulation in order just to make it loud. We're more interested in the quality of the original recording and then having a good balance and having as far as I'm concerned, a more complete experience, because that opens up the sound stage as well. And what you really are trying to do for a good recording, and the best engineers can achieve this, is you want to transport people that are listening to it into an environment that's like not where you are, but it's going to take you into a place where you're more intimate with that music.
Yeah.
So like people like Bruce Swedien, who did Michael Jackson stuff, those mixes, it's got all kinds of presence on the main instruments and the vocal and stuff, but you can walk in there and walk around in behind them and stuff like that. I don't know how they do it. Mixers, the best mixers can do that. They create this sound stage where you can wander around behind, but you have all this presence at the same time. That's not easy. That's hard to do. And so, all of these things are part of any mastering engineer needs to know what a really great recording sounds like, so that they have some kind of benchmark in their mind about where it could be or how good it could be. So that's what we're all trying to do. And I've thought about this many, many times. That's why I've given a lot of seminars, and I'm trying to get people to just spend time. And it's an automatic thing. If you listen to one kind of music and all kinds of different people that are doing it and so forth, the best ones are going to stick out.
Yeah, 100%.
You put them out, you put them on, you go, wow, that's really effective. Well, it just gets you. And so now this next guy that comes in, let me see if I can get that out of his. If it isn't there. Well, that's part of it. You have to train yourself to know, you need to know what's really good of this kind of music. What can be achieved. If you don't know the music, then you have to start really opening up yourself emotionally as best you can to it and try to see what's going to actually affect you the most in how you adjust the sound stage and how you adjust the frequency response and the balances and so forth, and what's important to this kind of music. Whereas in hip hop, you want a really punchy kick drum and things like that. The rhythm thing is very important. There are various things like that. But you don't want to go too far, because then it'll cover everything else up.
So that's awesome. With that, I think it's a good time to take a quick little break. And then I have a couple questions on mastering or remastering different stuff when we're back.
Okay, very good.
All right, so now we're back. A question that kind of struck me with what we were talking about just before the break, talking about feeling that emotion of the music and trying to communicate that. When it comes to remastering, so Soundstage founder Doug Schneider was in the record store a couple weeks ago and found a copy of The Dark Side of the Moon, and your name was on it. And this is one of the most iconic records that I could think of. Everyone knows this record. When it comes to remastering a record, especially one that somebody already has quite a lot of emotional attachment to, what does that process look like? Is that a different approach than when you master something for the first time?
Well, not necessarily. I'll get some things in sometimes that they're pre-mastered, what they call it, but they're pre-mastered so well that, sometimes it's better to not do anything to it. You want to capture, because as soon as we start doing something to it, we are introducing a little less quality to it, because we're running it through equipment or equalizers or whatever we're doing to manipulate the sound. So if it's really extremely well done, sometimes we have different signal paths in our studio. We build all of our own equipment, basically, or we hot rod everything also, if it's made by somebody else. We make everything better, usually. And that's so awesome. We have different ways of transferring a master that goes directly to the cutting system when we're making vinyl. It doesn't go through anything. It comes right out of the computer if it's a digital, or right out of the tape machine it can, and we can go directly to the cutting system without any electronics in between, and we can capture everything that's there without changing it, except for, I mean, you are going down another generation just by making a vinyl.
Yeah.
But our goal usually is to maintain the quality of the recording, whatever it is. And if we really feel, though, that we're going to get more by sending it through some equalization or whatever and manipulating it a little bit, then what we're losing, because anytime you do things like this and adjust the sound, you do lose a little bit of quality. Now, like I said, we build all of our own equipment. So our equipment, it's almost, even if we send it through our equalization system and all that stuff, we built it in such a way that only the frequencies we use are the ones that are in the circuit to manipulate. Oh yeah, it's very elaborate. So we're always trying, our main goal here is quality, is that we don't want to degrade the quality any more than we have to. We want to, in other words, we want to gain more than we're going to lose, because there's always a slight loss of quality, but sometimes that's okay, because what you're gaining is greater than that, than the loss. So, and this is true no matter where you are in this industry. And the main goal is that we would like to be able to mass produce to the public what we're hearing before we send it to the factory and so forth. Yeah. And even the vinyl does not sound as good as the lacquer that we cut. The lacquer, if you compare the lacquer that we cut to the signal that we're sending it with just a good playback system that's right on the cutting system that we calibrate with, if we A/B it, it's almost impossible to hear the difference. But when you get the vinyl out of the factory, after it's gone through all those stages of plating and so forth, now you can tell the difference. But some plants are better than other plants. So that's another whole other area that we don't want to get into. But I mean, some are way better than others. Some of them almost sound like the lacquer. But that's and even those plants have bad days.
Yeah. Joseph was telling me that as they press records, as they press vinyl, the longer a press is used, potentially you're getting a slightly different quality of recording. So
well, see, the fact is, vinyl is a fairly hard material, really, and these stampers are all made out of nickel, which is a hard metal, but they wear out.
Yeah,
because this is a mechanical operation, and vinyl, like I said, is going to wear it out after a while, after about 1,000 pressings or something like that. So the way they plate all this stuff and get it in the factory is they make multiple stampers. And actually between one stamper and another one, they might sound a little different, and who knows why, I mean, the plating bath, or who knows what's causing it. I'm not in the
manufacturing bit. Yeah.
All I know is that what we get out of the factories, and we can compare it to what we sent them, and we will know whether they did a good job or not, or we have a pretty good idea of what it should be or how good it could be. Yeah. But then again, we're not necessarily the final word, because a lot of people just want to get it out there.
Yeah.
So, but we are concerned about quality, and we like to hear how it did come out of the factory to see how much was lost. Because and then you have to determine that. Was too much lost? Should we reject this? Should we do it all over again? So it's really a moving target, this kind of thing.
So when you're looking at making these recordings, one of the other kind of big quality jumps that we've had over the last couple generations is we no longer listen to music on the radio quite as much. Now, a lot of people have streaming services. They have the ability to kind of access almost all music ever recorded practically from their phones. Does not mastering for the radio change kind of how you master? Was it a different time when you were mastering for the radio?
Well, it's similar, though, with pop music. It definitely is similar, because everybody wants a high average level. They want to really have it in a way so that if you're not paying full attention to it, you still get most of what's there. that it's at a high average level. And so way back when we were doing singles and various things, even in vinyl, everybody wanted fairly loud records. And if the cartridges got better, they'd want it even louder. They'd get it just before distortion, and then they would say, that's it. Okay. But I think even with streaming, they do want a fairly high average level. However, things are changing a little in the streaming because, I don't even know which streaming services and the differences between them, but some of them are actually adjusting the level that they send out to the average level.
Oh,
so
interesting.
In other words, if you've slammed it really hard and have everything at a similar level, to really have it loud all the time, they'll take it down because it's a high average level. So they'll take it down. And the one that's got more dynamics is going to sound just as loud because it has the average level is lower. So they'll raise that.
Interesting.
So some of that's happening now. So I can't really say where it is at this time because I never listened to streaming. So there's a lot of things that people don't understand about this. And so the only thing that's going to tell you if it's really good quality are your ears.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people telling me how great this is and how great that is and how I said, look, don't tell me how great it is. Just let me listen to it. Think about this. It's hard to explain this in some ways, but let me say it real simply, that the biggest thing that makes a difference in any audio system are the transducers. So any time you're changing mechanical to electrical or electrical back to mechanical, like a cartridge, a microphone, the cutting head itself is mechanical. Okay, you've got all of these things that are going to affect the sound, and those are the things that affect it more than the amplifier. The amplifier, you can make a perfectly ruler flat signal frequency response. You can't do that with a speaker or a microphone or anything. They're not perfect.
Yeah.
And no two speakers are alike, even the same model, same brand.
I found that out last week. Yeah. Left and right.
Because they're mechanical. They have little
deviations.
Well, because of the way they're built. Too, they have all kinds of little resonances and things that aren't going to stay the same for every one that's made. So, and even the measurements of amplifiers, where it's intermodulation distortion and harmonic distortion, it's only done in a simple way. They have no way of telling you what it's going to do on complex information. Yeah. That's why I tell in my seminar, I say, hey, the thing to do is listen through a piece of equipment that you're interested in, listen to some distortion and see how accurate it is on the output of it. Is it as good as what you sent it? I mean, how much have you lost? That's a real complex signal. Be hard to pass through the amplifier. So that's a better way of telling. But really, when it comes down, it's your ears that are going to tell you how good something is.
So for you, obviously you probably have studio monitors at work and you're really comfortable with that. When you're just listening to music for pure enjoyment, do you have a system set up at home, a listening room, or is it just more casual, like music is on throughout the home, or what is your personal relationship with music?
Oh, well, I was an audiophile from way back in the mid-'50s. All my money went to that. and I was so into bebop that when I was 19, I had an after-hours jazz club.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. No,
that's awesome.
I was raised in Phoenix, but I knew all the musicians in town, and I would go around. I had a little recording set up, too. But, that's kind of my background was when I discovered audio, high quality audio, because it was a new thing in the early 50s, because I walked into this store, the first high fidelity store I'd ever seen, because I had a real cheap record player listening to my dad's 78s. But I went in there and the Mac 30 had just come out, that little nice, real great looking amplifier. And it was all hobby. A lot of it was hobby. There were unfinished cabinets and all these speakers sitting on shelves and stuff. And the guy said to me, hey, let me play you something. And I said, okay. When he put that record on, it changed my life. Huh. I mean, I was shocked. at how great the sound was. After that, all my money went to high-end audio equipment, whatever I could find. So when I finally ended up with I have the, I have a pair of Westminster tannoys at home, which are their big top of the line, because I endorsed them years ago. And so I have a pretty big setup at home, and I have a big collection of LPs as well as CDs. And I'm definitely still interested in it. But I have great systems here at the studio. We have 5 studios here. So, and it's all really, everything's all put together by us. We build our own crossovers. We do all this stuff to get the best sound. And we don't want anything that's coloring the sound a lot. We want to have something neutral, so that when we manipulate it, we can really hear what we're doing, and it's something that will transfer and sound similar to that no matter where it goes.
That's awesome. So I think to close off our chat here, the question I have is a little bit more personal, and it's if we caught you on the average day, what kind of music or what particular song or what artist would you be playing to listen to for pure enjoyment, not for work, but for pure enjoyment? What would be on your record player?
Oh, well, that would be bebop jazz. Yeah. It would be, and like something maybe uplifting though in bebop jazz. And it would be something like Stanley Turrentine. Okay. Something over with his wife. She plays organ even, B3. But something that's really it's the 50s jazz, bebop jazz, and early 60s. The players actually were playing more to the rhythm. So there's a feel thing that they're working with more so. It's more connected in a certain way. And so it's really a great experience to make your day, to get you up and get you going and making you feel good. And plus, it's stimulating you intellectually, because any good bebop jazz takes you on one of those emotional journeys. Yeah. And it takes you on a journey that abstracts the beginning, the tone, the line of the tune. And it's all about improvising jazz. And so when it goes into the solo, a great player actually has you feeling that that tune is still in the background because it's playing to the chords, but they're taking you on a cohesive journey that's giving you an abstracted view of that tune, and you're getting to get more insight into that tune because of this solo that's taking you on this nice journey, emotional journey that's connected to that tune, but isn't playing the exact notes and in the same sequence, but it's showing you an expanded view and all kinds of different points of view of that same tune, if you're doing it properly.
I'm going to have to start looking into some of this. I'm going to take your recommendations. I wrote down some names here, and I'll go check some out.
Well, I don't think you'll be disappointed, but anything like that, like classical music or bebop jazz or some of the real advanced jazz things, a lot of people are afraid of it, but you've got to spend time with it. You've got to spend time, and finally it'll get through to you, and you'll realize what they're doing. Because you got to know the tune, too. You have to play this tune, and you have to know the tune. Then you have to know what they did to it, and how they made it even a bigger experience, and how they actually manipulated it in such a way that it really shows you a whole insight into that tune. And same way with classical music. You've got to pay attention, and you've got to get involved in it. And I'll give you one pointer on one of the most important pieces of classical music of the 20th century, and all musicologists feel this way about it. It's either Stravinsky's Rite of Spring or Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra. Now, my choice is Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra. Talk about a journey. Unbelievable. And you have to get Fritz Reiner and the Chicago Symphony on RCA. It's an old recording. He does it the best. He takes you on a ride you will not forget. If you finally get deep into it and follow it and let it take you, you're going to have an experience you never thought you'd have.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's how great music can be.
Well, so now I have my homework. hopefully this means that in a few months I can reconvene and we can chat and I can tell you all about the experience.
Yeah, do it. No, I'm telling you, you won't regret it.
Bernie, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and wishing you all the best, and take care, everyone.
Yeah, it was fun.